everyone. My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach and author of the wonderful little book, A Life to Die For. I'm also one of the co-authors in the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. Today, I'm embarking on episode number 224, and this one is called The Presence Game. Now, I have no doubt that you've heard about the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and I may be mispronouncing his name, but that's how it seems right to me. And anyway, that book was first published in 1997, and it's kind of become a kind of a cult classic on the whole subject of spirituality and all that kind of stuff. It's a popular influence in the field of spiritual and personal development. Now, Eckhart Tolle brought mainstream the idea of staying present in the here and now. He showed how our attachment to the past and our concerns about the future can actually inhibit our experience of joy, which he claims only exists in the present moment. And he claims that with some certainty, or certitude, I should say, and it seems like a true statement to me. But again, it's one of those things you have to experience for yourself. Anyway, it turns out that achieving presence is not a trivial task, mainly because we all have these powerful ego minds whose purpose is to help us make our way through the physical world. And unfortunately, one of the ego mind's favorite risk avoidance techniques is to rely on painful memories of the past to create fear-based projections of what might happen in the future in order to keep us safe. Now, not only that, but the ego mind resists efforts to surrender its own ideas about identity and control. And this, of course, makes it very difficult to bring our attention into the present moment. But what if presence could actually be fun? Wouldn't that make it more attractive and easier to get to? Well, that's what the presence game is all about. It's like a cosmic dance party where two or more people gather together to connect and explore the depths of their being. Imagine you and your friends gathering together, leaving your minds at the door and diving headfirst into the pool of sensations, emotions, and energies that make us truly human. Kind of like Simon Says, but instead of obeying commands, you follow the wild and wonderful aliveness of the present moment. So, presence, as you can probably tell, I think anyway, is a really important topic. And so I've invited back the amazing young man, Harry Sherwood, who's an expert in the field of compassionate inquiry, meditation, and mindfulness, and who uses all kinds of incredible tools to help people achieve this state and to make it much more active and alive in their lives. So please join me in welcoming Harry back to the show. Welcome, Harry. Hello again. Thanks for being here, and it's great to see you.
Always a pleasure to be on your show, David, and glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And so before we dive in here, I just want to acknowledge we've got quite a few people who have shown up for the live presentation. I just want to say thank you all for being here. The way we do this, it's going to be primarily a conversation between Harry and me, but if you have comments or questions, we'd love to have you share those in the chat, and we will do our best to respond to those or to answer any questions that come up. Anyway, Harry, I've known you now for about 4 years, I think. 4 years, maybe. I think that's when we first met. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. Maybe it was 2018, maybe. I think we met at Soul Treat. And I remember we kind of hit it off right away and just had some really, really interesting and deep conversations. And I now have come to know you as someone who really is on a dedicated path of personal growth and enlightenment. And I before we dive into our topic for the day, I'd like to understand a little bit more about your path and how you got there and why this is so important to you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have I think a response that I usually give, but I think I'm going to try to go a little bit of a different direction this time around. In some ways, I just in life have felt and have been programmed with not being enough. Just there's always a self-perception of not enoughness, of unworthiness, of a sense of I need to do something in order to be more so that I can be okay. And that has, or for a long time, went unnoticed. It just was there. And it created a sense of insecurity, so that even during times in my life that were amazing and great, and whether it was in high school when I was a jock, partier, popular, beautiful girlfriend, like the whole nine yards of, oh, that sounds fun. I was insecure and I didn't feel like I was enough, and something was missing, and it started to eat at me. And essentially, it kind of poisoned the well, so to say.
Right.
Uh, and that feeling mixed with an interest in wisdom teachings. I would see a quote from Gandhi and be fascinated by it, or I'd watch Dragon Ball Z and just they have these energy powers. It's kind of like superhuman type stuff, and I would just be like, "That's amazing! I want some of that."
Yeah, right.
And so just the mixture of the two is sent me on a mission, a quest towards learning about meditation through Paramahansa Yogananda. I went and lived with monks in China, studying Tai Chi and Qigong, lived with monks in SRF and yogic meditation, got a religious studies degree, got interested in life coaching and sports performance coaching and resilience coaching and intergroup dialogue and plenty of things along the way, all in the aid of running away from not being enough and running towards something that seemed to have the answer, something that seemed to be full of something that might be able to help me, that might be able to give me some wisdom as to how do I come into contact with my wholeness? How do I get rid of not being enough and just be myself? And how do I connect to this deeper essence, this deeper spirit, vibrational frequency of life, uh, in not a theoretical, conceptual manner, but in a visceral, embodied sense? And so, really, the journey's been about that ever since, and it has been a wild one.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned a couple of things that I just want to get some clarity on. First of all, you mentioned Paramahansa Yogananda, and second, you mentioned SRF, and I know what that is. But
Mm.
for people who maybe aren't familiar with those two name or the name and the abbreviation, can you please explain those and help people understand what that's all about?
Yeah, so Paramahansa Yogananda was a yogi from India that came to the States in 1920, and he founded an organization called Self Realization Fellowship, aka SRF. And they've been here ever since. They have a lot of different temples or ashrams, especially on the East Coast, or I mean, the West Coast, Encinitas, Culver City, uh, Pacific Palisades. And so I wandered into one in 2008, 2009, and learned about their teachings, taught about enlightenment, and so on and so forth. So I got involved with that.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And I gotta say, Paramahansa Yogananda is one of my favorite writers. I've got several of his books, and I am right now making my way through his book, The Second Coming of Christ, which
Mm.
is absolutely amazing. There's just so much great stuff in there. Uh, what it now, I mean, Yogananda is one of many people like that who seem to have a connection, a deep connection to the source of all knowledge, if you like, and who then share that knowledge to us in written form or other different forms. And I think Eckhart Tolle is another example of that. Neil Donald Walsh. These are people, and David Hawkins. These are people that I have heard about and read about who all seem to have that connection. And what they all say, uh, which I believe is true, is that it's not just a connection unique to them. All of us have this connection. And the problem is most of us are not really aware of it, or if we are aware of it, we kind of dismiss it because we, as you say, have this notion that we're somehow not good enough. Why would God, spirit, universe, source want to talk to me? So this is kind of, I think that whole thing about not being enough, not being good enough, that is one of the most common issues that humans have to deal with. And of course, it's absolutely false. However, we all have to deal with it because it's our ego minds that tell us we're not good enough. And the ego mind is constantly telling us to avoid things that might, in fact, expand our awareness. So it's a big topic for sure. So you've gone through all these these places, studied with monks, and got a degree in religious studies, and done a lot of meditating. And so what? What's that done for you?
It's a good question. And I like the so what about it, because there is an aspect about if it's only ever a story to tell, it's not very valuable. It's not like, yeah, cool. I traveled the world and meditated with some pretty amazing people, but did it do anything for me? Is there an aspect of embodiment? Is there a sense of, hey, I am now more myself. I'm more connected. I'm more present. I am fill in the blank with whatever, more enlightened, um, that someone is seeking through that. So I like that. And what has it done for me? Well, it's driven me crazy. I can tell you that much. The first and foremost, it has been very confronting. It has been a huge journey of locking myself in a room with myself. And depending on when, but in a lot of those cases, for months and months on end, it's throwing away coping mechanisms. It's getting rid of the things that I would naturally turn to not have to feel this way, to not have to feel the not enoughness and the shame and the guilt and the rage and the sadness and the grief and the whatever I'm trying to avoid. And then giving me some techniques to then meet this part of myself, to then navigate this space. But application when it's really when stuff is hitting the fan, so to say, is always different. And so in a way, it has allowed me to learn about myself and learn about my pains and learn about what I truly want in life, and learn about, when I am coming close to my breaking point, what does that feel like? And what do I turn to when I truly feel like if I go any further, I will break, and it might not be good psychologically. What is it that I turn to? Do I turn to God? Do I turn to presence? Do I turn to love? Do I turn to, and to really then nourish that relationship from there? Can I truly then start to trust in those things moving forward, because I got real about how deep this is for me, how much this is a part of my essence, and how much I want to nourish and flower that relationship. And so that's an aspect. There's a lot more. It's taught me about stillness and silence, and how to let the mind go crazy and go, but then just slowly start to not pay much attention to it, and recognize, like, oh, all this is held within an infinite space. All noise comes out of silence, all movement out of space and stillness, and to start to connect to those things in a really powerful and beautiful way, but not to then reject the noise and the movement and everything else, but then start to dance between them in a sense,
Right.
and plenty more.
Yeah, yeah. Now you mentioned about, first of all, I had to mute myself because someone is outside doing lawn work, and it's a pretty loud blower, so I might have to do that again when you're talking later. I just want you to be aware of that. But it's a so you mentioned that you actually locked yourself in a room to be with yourself. Now, maybe it was a physical room, I don't know, but there's also a way in which you may need to just simply lock yourself into a figurative room. You
Mm.
can be out in nature somewhere and choose to do that, and really, as you say, confront yourself, get down to the truth of who you really are. And that's what I think this work is really all about. In the ultimate sense, there is nothing more important than knowing the truth about who you really are. Everything else is all just, the stuff that goes on around you. And when you understand the truth of who you really are, which is far, far more expansive and amazing than the little stories you tell yourself in your mind, when you understand that, then it becomes easier and easier and easier over time to stay present to the truth. That's been my experience. Does that resonate for you?
Yes. Yes. What I would say that is continuously happening for me is a sense of okayness in myself, a sense of okayness in this moment, and then recognizing the parts of me that are still trying to move away from here. How do I get? Oh, no, how do you feel? No, oh, no, okay, and then just bringing myself back. And in this moment, the all that you were talking about earlier, the all that isness, truth is inherent. There's to be fully present is to be in truth completely. To be fully present is to be in love completely. To be fully present is to be connected. And so if I just teach myself to stay a little bit longer, maybe I can stay for just 5 seconds. Can I get to 6? Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, can I get to 7? And just keep coming back and keep meeting the part of myself that leaves. And this is the part where I think a lot of people start to shoot themselves in the foot a little bit, which is I make the part of me that leaves wrong. I make the not enoughness wrong. I make the coping mechanisms wrong. I make the whatever it is, the judgment wrong. And why does that exist in the first place? Well, most of the time, that was the part that developed as an adaptive mechanism to get you through whatever you're going through. It actually has a deep wisdom in it. And there's some part of you that still feels like it's necessary. So can you trust its wisdom? Can you honor its wisdom and say, okay, I hear that you're not ready yet. Can we start making our way towards being ready? Because there's other parts of me that are. And to slowly just meet that part of myself more and more and more. And maybe it gets ready and maybe it takes longer than we want. And that's maybe there's frustration that comes up or whatever it is. But yes.
Well, I got to
Yeah.
say, there's just so much meat here, so much meat for discussion. One thing that I noticed you said. Now, I've been reading Jiddu Krishnamurti lately.
Mm,
I don't know if you're aware of his writings. The guy is amazing. But when you talked about, okay, I'm at 5 seconds. Can I get to 6? The thought that came to my mind immediately was, oh, there's that not enoughness again.
mm,
It's interesting how that shows up in everything we do. It's like, here I am, and in this place, it's perfect, but I want it to be more perfect, as if perfection can be improved upon, you know. And it's interesting that I believe that whole notion, that stuff comes from the mind. It comes from the ego mind, constantly trying to, be in competition, trying to improve, get better, do this, do that, take one more step, and so forth, when maybe this is exactly the perfect place to be. 5 seconds, wow. I'm just going to enjoy that for the moment, and I'm going to let my thoughts going crazy and just have some fun with it. Can I do it again? That would be fun. Let's see what happens if I do it again. Maybe it's only 4 seconds. So Candace just said, that was powerful. I will need to re-listen to this later to soak it in properly. Well, thank you, Candace. I appreciate your comment. And yeah, feel free to watch the recordings and get more out of it later. So anyway, I would like to focus our attention on the word presence. I mean, what exactly does that mean? What is presence? I mean, I have my ideas, and I'm sure you have yours, but is there a way we can define it or describe it such that everyone can resonate with that?
mm. Yeah, I want to touch on what you said because I think there is a lot of stuff there, but we can maybe circle back to that. We'll put a pin in it.
Okay.
Um, presence is something that in some ways is the most natural thing in life, and in some ways is easy and hard to define. So the way that I usually talk about presence is I just ask someone, "Are you in the room? Are you in the room that you're in right now?" And if you just look around and notice what else is in the room, that's a really good way to become present. Just, oh yeah, there's a keyboard, a water bottle, a lamp. Mhm. And just notice how it feels to be here. And it can be that simple. I'm here. I'm in the room. My attention, my awareness, my presence, my me. I'm here. And the question becomes is can we not be present then? It depends on how you look at it. I'll go with the answer yes first. if we say you cannot be present, then what part of us are we referring to? And usually it's the attention or the awareness, that my
Hmm.
attention is elsewhere. It is thinking about yesterday and all the stuff I did and I didn't do, and I can't believe that thing happened, and oh my gosh, which usually leads me to the future. Now I have to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow because I didn't do it yesterday, and
Right.
whatever it
Hmm.
is. Or maybe I start fantasizing about something else, like, what would life be like if I didn't have to pay taxes? That would be so nice. and
Right.
and I just do one of these. I keep displacing myself from being here, being in the place that I am, and within that impacts our experience of life. It impacts the sense of aliveness, our capacity to feel the present moment, because I'm not in it. My attention, my awareness is not in it. So how can I feel the sun on my face? How can I feel my feet meeting the carpet? How can I feel my clothes touching my skin? How can I feel the temperature if I'm not here? So a lot of presence practices really just bring us here, just bring us into the moment. And there's to say that there's something special about it in some ways is misleading. It's like, no, can it create a deep sense of peace and serenity? Yeah. Can it create a deep sense of connection to this moment? And for those who can tap into spirit and feel that vibration, then therefore also start to connect to that because that's also here right now. Yeah. Like, is it a portal in some ways? Totally. Yes. But I'm just here. I'm just here. And most people's challenge, depending on what their intentions are, is then staying in the room. Yeah, here I can come here when you talk about it, but the second I sign off of this, I gotta get to work, or I gotta go, and then I'm not present anymore. And so and to your point of what you were just talking about, is that okay? Maybe. Depends on the person, depends on their intentions. If I were to answer the question, or the answer of like, can someone not be present? And I go with no, well, who's aware of thinking about yesterday? Me. And can I be aware of thinking about something without being present to it? No. So then, in the other sense, we're always present. There's no way of falling out of presence. And that's really more Taoist perspective, where they talk about there's no way to not be in the Tao. The great unfolding, the great way, you can't get out of it. You're in it. Period. No matter how disconnected you feel. So stop trying to get back into the water because you never left it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So what I heard you say, and what seems to resonate for me, is that presence and awareness, well, they may not be exactly the same thing, but they're certainly very closely related.
Mm.
And the way I view it, I can be present and be unaware simultaneously. Well, I think that is true. I mean, I'm always present in the grand scheme of things. I'm always present, but I'm not necessarily always aware of my presence.
Mm.
So the more I can raise my awareness, the more I can appreciate my presence. That's how I kind of look at it. Of course, it's just words trying to explain a concept that may be beyond words. It may be beyond description. And I think that's something else that we have to be aware of. One of the things that I learned from reading Krishnamurti is this idea that often when we try to meditate or become present, what we try to do is we try to exclude all that other stuff. We try to pretend that, okay, that all the things of the mind are not here, but I'm here. And he says, but isn't that just another form of resistance, which isn't really acceptance and presence? Because now you're separating yourself from all the other things that are going on. And I thought about that, and I thought, that really makes a lot of sense. So in other words, when you are meditating, it shouldn't be about stopping the mind from doing what it does, because that's just a form of resistance. What it should be instead, what might I don't like to use the word should, what might serve you better is just simply observing the mind and understanding how the mind works and allowing it to go quiet on its own. And that's kind of been my personal practice anyway, even before I read those words. But it now makes more sense to me. Before, it was just kind of an intuitive unfolding, if you like. And now I've got a little bit of an intellectual backing to go behind it that helps me understand why I was doing what I was doing. You see?
Mm. Mhm.
So, and it's the same thing with you asked the question, am I in the room? Can I feel my feet on the floor? Can I feel the coolness of the air on my skin? I'm thinking about this now in terms of linear logic. Okay. And of course, in a spiritual sense, there's really no such thing as linearity. I mean, it's all happening simultaneously. Everything is now. But from the perspective of just trying to live our lives from a day-to-day point of view, as I contemplate the question, can I feel my butt on this chair? Can I feel my feet on the floor? First, I have to go through a process of scanning and then find that energy of feeling. And in the process of doing that, the feeling has already happened before I become aware of it. So there's a bit of a delay, a time delay. So in effect, what I have experienced actually happened in the past. So am I really present? That is the kind of the conflict and the paradox that I find myself dealing with on a regular basis. How do you help people to maybe resolve that paradox?
Mm. One of the things that I have navigated around or towards is overcomplicating or the complexity of life. It can, I mean, the more you pull at that thread, life is incredibly complex. It's so beautifully complex. But I often find that it's not always helpful to take that approach. And so with what you're talking about, often what I try to help people do is just get them acquainted with various parts of themselves, where a lot of people are very acquainted with their minds, or at least acquainted with their minds in a certain capacity. But then are they acquainted with physical sensation? And just saying, okay, for the next few minutes, let's just feel our bodies. Okay, now let's start to include a little bit of emotion. Are there any emotions present? Where in your body does that live? Just start to map out themselves a little bit more and just come into their universe, and to not really complicate it past that, and then say, your attention's naturally going to be drawn to various things over time, and you can also direct it to various things over time, but then start to get them maybe a little bit more habituated to, in some ways, decoupling my experience of reality to thought first and recoupling it to feeling first. And this is one of the things that, if I were to simplify enlightenment in some ways, it would be somewhat what I'm talking about. Of So often when I am sitting here and I look at a lamp or I look at my water bottle, I go into mental description of it. It's a white water bottle. It's 36 ounces, and I can describe it, and I can describe its function, and I can describe how many times a day I refill it, and I can tell you all parts about it. Versus a feeling first experience of reality is, as I sit with it, the white actually, it feels like it opens up my energy a little bit. My heart even opens up. The longer I stay with it, there's actually a sense of peace. I notice some tension falling away. It's a very different experience of a water bottle. And so, can I play the game of presence? Can I play with feeling life? What does it feel like to just try to feel what I see, not just what I touch, but what I see, what I hear? For any musicians or anyone who likes music, I see my friend Greg is on here. He's a musician. When we feel every strum of the guitar, every key of the piano played, but I feel it with my energy, with my body, with my emotion, and it just ripples through me. It feels like I become a part of it. And this is where enlightenment, if we go deeper into it, starts to come in a beautiful way, because all that really means is I'm unified with life. There is no longer a perceived separation. And when I feel the water bottle so deeply, as if it's like, oh no, this thing is not separate from me, then
Right.
I can forget about all the mental stuff and all the philosophies and all the other stuff. If I just feel first, it can be
Yeah, that's beautiful.
so
I really
powerful.
like that. That's a, I mean, I think people could develop an entire practice in life. Just feel first.
Mm.
When you're meditating, I like this idea. Just look at some object. Notice what are the feelings that happen as you take that object in. What sensations coming up in your body? Forget about the thoughts for the moment. The thoughts will come and go, but just notice the feelings and the sensations, the emotions. It's interesting that you ask about this, because I notice I've done a lot of this kind of work myself, but for a different purpose, and not so much about presence, but more about just checking in. I used to do like body scan and say, what am I feeling? And is there a message associated with that thought or that feeling? Um, and what's the emotional energy that's encompassed in there? And one thing I discovered for myself is that sometimes I could be feeling anger, and it would sometimes show up in my head, like really, really tight knot in my head. But sometimes I could feel it in my hands or maybe in my butt. And the
Mm.
thing that's really interesting is that emotions, we often think of the heart as the center for emotion, but emotions kind of manifest as sensations in the body as well. And just because, maybe normally you get angry by moving your hands or something, that doesn't mean that that's where anger is always going to show up for you. Or love might show up as tears streaming out of your eyes. It might show up as this welling of your heart. It might show up as just an expansiveness that happens, I don't know, in your knees. So the beauty of this is you have to be aware. Well, you don't have to do anything. Let me take that back. If you choose to do this exercise, be open to the possibility that the sensations can happen anywhere. And they don't have to happen in a particular place just because, that's the story that we've heard. Okay. And I think so what you're talking about is really, really powerful. And I think very, very important to this whole notion of presence. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what you're saying about allowing the moment to teach us, let us know, okay, anger's showing up in my hands right now, or my feet, it's showing up in my solar plexus or my heart. It's showing up. That's in large part the beginner's mind philosophy that's often talked about, and just a sense of, one of the things I really like to do, especially on stuff like this, is just before I hop on, be like, oh, I'm curious what I'm going to say. Because I've answered some of these questions hundreds of times. But is it still true? Is it true in this moment? Is it coming through? Or do I have a different relationship to this moment? Is there a different texture present? Is it showing up in a different place in my body? Last time it came with a little bit of fear. This time it's coming with a little bit of joy. And it's just this, all right, am I here completely? Can I just be here and find out what this here-ness feels like? And it can be a curious exploration. It can be a wondrous adventure. Sometimes it's not so fun, but it can still be a wondrous adventure.
Well, that's an interesting thing too. I mean, you mentioned curiosity and adventure, and uh, I think all of us, when we look back on all of our life, and just remember everything that's ever happened in your life. And whether it was painful or pleasurable or joyful or unhappy or angry or what, it doesn't matter. Notice how you feel about it now, many years later after it's happened. Imagine how your life might have turned out if that particular event had never taken place. It's like the whole It's a Wonderful Life story, the one with Jimmy Stewart, how he he thought that he just completely messed up and he was ruining everybody's life and everything, and he had the opportunity to look back and see all of the ways that he had contributed to so many people's lives with tiny little things that really most of us don't even think about. And all of the things that have happened in our lives have contributed to help us become who we are right now and to be where we are right now. And without that stuff, maybe this wouldn't have happened. I mean, it might have. So I think it really, really makes sense to go back and recognize, as you say, that this was all a wonderful adventure. And there's yet more to come. My life isn't the story that has happened so far. It is just everything that's going on. And there's lots more to come. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe some of it I do know, maybe some of it I don't. And that's the beauty of it. Let's just be here right now and enjoy this moment.
Yeah, there's kind of like a crux here. There's a tension point that I think a lot of people come into contact with when they start doing spiritual development, self-development, which is what you also referenced earlier, that there seems to be an intuition in most people I come across that there is a richness to life that they aren't tapping into, that there is something that they know with the deepest part of themselves that is true, is real, and yet it's every time they go for it, it just slips through their fingers like air. And so there's this piece here where it's like, how does someone get that? How does someone start to connect to that? And this is where the two different kind of philosophies of spiritual tradition differ. One side says, you're a fish in the ocean, man, and you're looking for water. I don't know what to tell you. Like, open
Right?
your eyes, just breathe. And
Yeah.
this is where presence is incredibly powerful, because there's a sense of just, if I learn to just land here, now, as it is, without needing it to be different, without needing myself to be different. And that includes my insecurities and my not enoughness and all of that, which is what I've been going through very deeply over the last 2 months. And it has included a lot of pain. But if we just land here more, and the carpet on my bare feet I start to notice it more. I start to feel it more. It starts to be this just little joyous thing that's just like, whoa, I miss that because I'm so displaced from this. And so one thing is just like, yeah, just let go and trust and be here. And the other side says, yeah, that's all well and good. But but you have a lot of work to do. You have a lot of traumas and programming, and you need to learn techniques in order to connect with your chakras and your energy systems, and you need to learn to come into stillness, right? And you could go on and on. You need to learn manifestation, or even you need to learn how to surrender, right? There's a learning and developmental process simultaneously, and there's kind of two different schools, and they're fun to try to marry, right? They're fun to say like, ooh, how do I grow and develop while surrendering? And is surrender a developmental process? And it becomes this feed forward feedback thing. But it can create a point of tension, a deep point of tension inside of someone. And this is full circle to what you mentioned with, oh, 5 seconds, can I do 6? Right? The simplicity of just asking, can I do 6? Yet the depth of insecurity and not enoughness and lack of worth that can be involved in my constant need to try to better myself can also be a deep lack of faith, a deep lack of, hey, do I truly believe that I will unfold into this great butterfly or into this thing? Or if that doesn't happen, am I going to wait for my life to start for another 30 years while I try to figure this thing out? Or am I going to start living now by feeling
Right.
my feet on
Or
the
how
ground?
about, am I already a butterfly and I just haven't acknowledged that yet?
Yeah.
This is an ongoing challenge for all of us. And I talk about the ego mind a lot because I think the ego mind is, while I believe that its ultimate purpose is to help us and keep us safe and help us make our way through the physical world, it does so with a restricted perspective. And it does it usually, we would associate the concept of fear with the way that the ego mind operates, because it's always worried about damage and worried about risk and worried about danger and trying to protect us from those things. And so consequently, it needs to be, it doesn't need to be, but it tends to be fearful of what might happen, and consequently avoids those things in order to keep the safety there. But the truth of the matter is, and this is where I think your teaching and the teaching of Eckhart Tolle comes into play, when you just let that fall away, when you allow the ego mind to just say what it's going to say and just observe it and say, oh, thank you for that, that's an interesting perspective. If you can get to that place and just stay present in this moment, then you'll discover that most of the time what the ego mind was warning you about is complete, it's artificial, it's fake, it's not real at all. And 99.9% of the time, what the ego mind is afraid of never happens. Yeah, sure, sometimes it happens. And maybe there will be a day when you're walking across the street and all of a sudden you realize there's a bus bearing down on you. Well, in that case, you want your ego mind to warn you about it and get you out of there. Well, unless you don't.
Unless you don't.
That's right. And but so yeah, then you'd be really grateful for the fact that the ego mind saved you from impending doom. But even that is a false fear, because even if that bus did bear down on you and completely mangle and destroy your body, so you're no longer physically here anymore, your essence, your true essence, that who you really are, continues to exist and merges with the rest of spirituality. And it's all consciousness. It's amazing to me. Yeah, I guess I'm ranting again. Sorry.
I like the topic though, because in some ways I actually approach this conversation a little bit differently than you just did with people and with myself, which is more of the sense of like, hey, those fears are actually warranted, and it's the potential pain of being human is real, and it is intense. Like the level of suffering that if we just turn on the news or look out the window or talk to a friend that they may or may not be going through is, yeah, like I have a deep compassion for what is happening right now. As we are speaking, there are horrific things happening to people. And
True.
so there is a sense of, okay, so can we look at that with as much empathy and as much compassion as possible, with eyes wide open for as long as I can? Maybe that's 5 seconds again, right? But maybe I can really look into it and feel into it and then say, okay, what are my fears? What is it that my ego is trying to stop from happening? Well, it doesn't want to be seen in certain lights. It wants to be revered. It wants to be understood. It wants to be accepted. It wants to be whatever. Okay. It wants to be loved. And can I get real with that? And can I face that? And can I understand that? And then can I say, so are we going to let this dictate our lives? Are we going to, we now know the fear because we've felt into it and it's intense. When I felt into mine about a month and a half ago, it was so intense that I understood how animals could die of fright. Like I literally was terrified, panic. It was so intense because I got very real with this part of myself. And then it's like, okay, I honor you. I cried and I cried and I cried, and it's helped me see things. But okay, you're real. Okay, now what? What next? Are we going to let this fear of pain and fear of death dictate our life? Because another way of framing fear of death is fear of fully living. and I fully live with all of myself, including the fear, and choose to move forward to be myself completely in this moment, to speak my truth, to howl, to growl, to do whatever, and to be here and to have the courage to be fully alive. And if I live that way, the day that that bus comes, maybe I won't care because I've been living fully.
Yeah,
Maybe that is what we all want, is as Joseph Campbell says, he says, I don't think we want to figure out the mystery of life. I'm butchering this, by the way. What I think we really want is to feel the rapture of being alive. And I think the rapture of being alive is to live fully, is to be so
right.
fully here now with all of myself and to be real about what do I want? I want to be alive. I want to be free. I want to be free of enlightenment. Honestly, that's my answer right now. I want to be free of enlightenment. I don't want to care anymore. I really don't. I
That's
want
nice.
to let go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really quite beautiful how you described all that. And as you were talking about all these horrific things happening and how the ego mind doesn't want to acknowledge how my ego mind anyway doesn't want to acknowledge the participation in that kind of stuff. I think ultimately pain comes from a failure or an unwillingness to recognize that whatever is going on out there is is an expression of all that is that could have come from me.
Mm, mm,
Most people don't want to acknowledge the Hitler or the Stalin or the Mao Zedong that might be inside themselves. Most people would say that guy was just a tyrant, a horrible person. They'd rather project that energy out there onto the externalized form of that energy rather than acknowledge that it exists within here. And I think you talk about enlightenment. I think where enlightenment and surrender actually starts to come in is when I am willing to own that part of me that is like Hitler, that is like Stalin, that is like Mao Zedong, or like any other of these so-called horrible people that you might care to name. Because if I can do that, then maybe I can also learn to acknowledge and accept the fact that there's a Jesus Christ in here, a Buddha. There's a part of me that has that energy as well. And we can make a choice about which form of energy we want to bring forth in the world, but we cannot do that if we refuse to acknowledge all of the possibilities that are within us. And that, I think, is what really awareness and presence and enlightenment are all about, is just acknowledging the truth of who we really are. All of it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, and everything else. So I believe when we can do that, then we will get to that place of being free and not requiring ourselves to be enlightened. I don't need to be enlightened. I just choose to raise my consciousness and my presence and my awareness to the highest level possible so that I can have a positive impact on the world. A net positive impact. That doesn't mean to say I won't slip up. I won't, say something nasty from time to time because I'm still human, and those little parts of myself that I don't want to acknowledge, sometimes they sneak out and have their way with me. You know
mm.
what I mean?
Yeah. And if I reflect on people that I either like to be around most or people that have had the biggest impact on me in life, it's the people that have reached a very deep part of themselves and they live it. They embody it. They simply know that they want to orient from love and they live that way. And
Right.
sometimes love is vicious. Sometimes
Yeah,
love
that's true.
sometimes it demands something of us that we don't want to do because we have so much fear. Oh, I don't. I don't want to have to change my habits. I don't want to have to change the way I interact with people. I don't want to,
Right.
well, if I'm going to stand in love and truly emanate that, it alchemizes. And I think just fully living is medicine, is a gift from us to us as humans. And that's great leadership is embodied, in my opinion. And that's where
Yeah.
presence and enlightenment and everything you're talking about comes in strongly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things as I've been in my cave, so to say, over the last couple of months, is just getting very real about what do I want? What do I want to embody? Who do I want to be? And the two answers that have come up is I want to be free. I want to be free of enlightenment. I want to be free of needing to be anything other than I am.
Beautiful.
And I want to love. I want to love so deeply myself, my cat, the ground, you, people, life, that I just orient from there. That's
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah,
everything
that's
else.
really beautiful. And so that's where I think, we talk about the game of presence or the presence game, however you want to phrase it. Now, I chose to call this the presence game just because I didn't want to steal your name for your thing. But before we get to that, I want to just talk about the idea of treating presence as a game.
Mm,
Why don't you
mm.
share a little bit about that? And, how can we play with this? How can we have fun with it?
Yeah, I think it is a simple answer, and I think you just answered it. Is it brings in a sense of fun and playfulness. It brings in a sense of nourishment. It allows the child to show up as much as the adult, and it just is like, okay, when I play a video game, I'm having fun most of the time, or else I probably wouldn't be playing. When I'm playing tennis, I'm having fun. When I'm playing volleyball or whatever, it makes it multi-textural. It allows it to be like, oh yeah, didn't make the shot today, maybe I'll make it tomorrow, or whatever type of. It takes this intense seriousness out of it a little bit. Lets a little bit of the heat out of the kettle type of thing. And one of the things that I've had to learn how to do again the last couple of months is just nourish myself. What
Yeah.
do I deeply find nourishing? Music. Oh my God, I love music. Music, dance, nature, just simple things, but playful. I can go be present in nature. I can dance while being present. It's presencing naturally. So
Yeah.
that playfulness, big time.
And playfulness is something I think that is just a natural expression of spirit and love. That's what it is. I mean, when you watch kids when they're playing before they have succumbed to all of the conditioning that they're going to get throughout their lives, you notice that there's a kind of an abandonment. Not abandonment. That's not the right word. It's just like I'm having fun and I don't care what you think about me kind of approach. And they're not afraid to make fools of themselves. And most of the time, we'll sit there, we'll laugh at them, and we'll enjoy it vicariously, thinking, "Oh, I could never do that because I'd look like such an idiot," you know. And yet, isn't that what we really want inside? Is to have the freedom to look like an idiot? Most of us really would love to be able to do that. Maybe that's what we should do, Harry, is create a workshop called How to Be an Idiot and enjoy it or something like that. That could be fun. That could be a fun project. So speaking of projects, I know you've got this thing called the Game of Presence project, and I'd like you to share a little bit about what that's all about and why you started creating that.
The Game of Presence project is essentially me documenting myself going into isolation and being present, and then everything we've talked about, me learning about myself, my true wants, desires, understanding presence in a deeper capacity by being playful with it. And I'm actually 2 months in as of 3 days from now. So it's been a journey, high highs, low lows, a lot of intensity, a lot more emotion than I was expecting. But at the same time, it's not surprising at all. A lot of connection. And I've kind of, to the what we were saying, is I've landed in a place of a lot of this was driven for my interest in enlightenment that I have been pursuing for 14 years now. And I actually have come to a place where I've decided to put it down. I am not going to be pursuing enlightenment after this. And it's been that very sad. Honestly, I cried a lot when I've decided to make this decision. And I don't know what that means, but I do know I don't want to keep waiting to be somewhere else. And so I want to fully participate in life right now. That's what the Game of Presence Project is all about. So in some ways, it's morphing and I'm opening it up a little bit more. I'm letting in whatever I want. So I actually joined a couple of dating apps. So I'm gonna date during all this, and so I don't know what it's gonna look like moving forward. It's gonna be interesting, but I'm gonna do my best to fully meet every moment.
Yeah.
And we're releasing episodes a couple times a week, just nightly reflections, little footage from the day. What was it like? What were the challenges? What were the everything? Um, and it's been fun. It's been cool. So it's a docu-series around
I see.
presence.
Are you going to actually compile it all together into one big documentary later on, or what are you planning on doing with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's already on YouTube. Maybe the episodes are released and that's all that happens. But we did plan on taking the footage and making something a little bit more formal and like maybe 90-minute documentary type of thing at some point. Uh, we'll see. We'll see.
When you say we, who's working with you on this?
I have an editor, a friend of mine that I lived in the ashram with 13 years ago, from Brazil. So he's
I
working
see.
with me on it.
I see. Right. Now, I just wanted to come back to something that you said that, I heard you say that you had been pursuing a path of enlightenment for, I think you said 14 years, and you decided to put that down. And it brought up a lot of sadness and sorrow for you. And I can resonate with that. And I just would like you to consider the possibility that maybe your path to enlightenment is exactly what you're doing, putting down the desire for enlightenment and simply allowing yourself to be who you really are. Perhaps that is the movement towards true enlightenment.
And it very well could be. And I've had that concept or thought in mind in the past when I'm like, oh, I got to put this down. But where I am right now is if I truly am letting this go, I have to let go of that too. I have to let go of, well, hey, this might be a back door into enlightenment. And
Right,
and
right.
and it's
Sure.
just like, no, if I let go of the buoy in the middle of the ocean and I sink directly to the bottom and die, like I have to be okay with that. If I
Mm,
float and swim, I have to be okay with that. If I learn to breathe underwater, like I'm letting go now. And whatever that means is what it means. And that's what scared me to death for a very long time.
right.
But it's
So this
it's
is
just
really an exercise in surrender. More, well, I mean, the presence part is there as well, but it's a big exercise in surrender, if I'm understanding you correctly.
yeah, massive. Massive. There's a part of me that's finally I've beaten myself up enough. I've meditated for thousands and thousands of hours. I have locked myself in rooms for months on end. And it's just there's just this part of me that's like, Harry, when is enough enough, man? And
Bingo.
enough's enough.
Bingo. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, Harry, we've been having, I mean, absolutely fabulous conversation as always. I just love the depths that we go to together. And I would just like to have you, first of all, if you can just drop the link to your project in the chat there, that would be helpful so people can go there and check it out. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is, I'll let you copy that in first. There you go. Okay, so it's thegameofpresence.org. And I'll make sure to put that link on your permanent page for the recording of this on the website. Um, so it's been an absolutely fabulous conversation, and I would love to give you an opportunity to say some final words. Whatever you'd like to say right now to folks.
Hmm. Don't wait to live, even if it's going to be painful. Live, live now. Love, as deeply as you want to. Speak your truth, be present, play with it.
Play with it.
Follow your heart.
Right. Well, beautiful, Harry. Thank you so much for being here again. And I just want to say, this idea of presence, it may sound like a difficult thing to achieve, but it's a lot more enjoyable when you can make it a play, make it fun, make it a game. Really, the presence idea, the idea of a game is your magic key to awakening your awareness, to your connection with all that is. When you are ready, join the game and discover how deep the rabbit hole of interconnectedness actually goes. I think you'll be beautifully and pleasantly surprised. I want to thank you all for watching today's program. I want to remind you that you can watch or catch recordings of this and all my other episodes on my website at lifemasterytv.com. And I would like to remind you to practice the Life Mastery mantra every day. And Harry, maybe this is something you can do as well. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. And I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, I'm David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.